Alright, what's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here, and today I wanted to talk to you about the movie Pacific Rim, which came out in 2013, I think. And this was a movie that, when it first came out, everyone in the world was hyping it as being the greatest movie of all time. I remember people saying, if you haven't seen it, go see it, and if you have seen it, go see it again. And when anyone ever does that, that always makes me less interested in seeing the movie. I did a video a couple years ago about movies that were so incredibly hyped that made me much less interested in seeing them. Movies like Skyfall or Frozen or Inception. Movies like that where everyone in the world is just frothing at the mouth, and then when I see it, my expectations are through the roof, and then as such, I end up walking away disappointed. And that is very much the experience that I had with Pacific Rim. And I want to go ahead and say, I actually watched this movie twice. The first time I watched it, I really hated it. I just did not enjoy it. About halfway in, I paused the movie so that I could go and fix myself some lunch, and then all throughout that point forward, I was basically just not invested in the movie. I wasn't especially invested in the first place, but I was at least trying. And the first time I watched the movie, it just wasn't a good time for me. I just really wasn't enjoying it. I was feeling a little sick. So I tried watching it a second time, and I watched it with my parents. And my parents are much less critical of just about anything than I am. So I figured, okay, they're probably going to really enjoy this movie. So even if I don't enjoy it, I'll probably at least have more fun watching it with people who are enjoying it. And I did end up enjoying the movie a lot more the second time through. But I still had problems. So much so that I took notes. Yeah, this is one of those movies where I took a whole bunch of notes on everything that I really did not like about the movie. Still, didn't care for it a whole lot, but I did have a lot more fun the second time through. So I wanted to talk about basically my biggest problem with this movie is that there is no story here. And I knew going into this that the basic premise was giant robots fighting giant monsters. I knew that, and I expected there to be more. I don't know what I was expecting to find, but I expected there to be something more than just the premise that gets people in. I knew that was going to bring people in who are big fans of giant monsters and giant robots, but I thought once you've lured those people in that you're going to have some kind of story or some kind of interesting character or something interesting going on, and there just wasn't anything like that. Basically, it's exactly what you see in the trailer. It's giant robots fighting giant monsters, and I was really disappointed that we didn't get something more than that. And I think I was even more disappointed knowing that the director of this movie is Guillermo del Toro, who brought us the two Hellboy movies, which I really enjoyed. Now, I haven't seen either of those movies in a few years, so maybe I need to go back and watch those movies, and probably if I do, I'll realize that those movies are quite a bit more flawed than what I remember, but I really enjoyed those Hellboy movies. They are really great movies. This movie does not hold a candle to either of those. This movie is just dumb action scenes. And I want to go ahead and get into my notes now. The first thing that I really noticed, and I noticed this the first time, and it was even more apparent the second time, the first roughly 15 minutes of this movie, you could very easily just cut that off and start. There's about a 15-minute action scene that takes place about 5 years before the rest of the movie. And then you get the big, not the credit scene, but the big title card that says Pacific Rim. And then you're like, oh yeah, the movie. You could very easily start with the title card that says Pacific Rim, and then everything that happens in that first 15 minutes can be given to us in expositionary dialogue or flashbacks. None of that stuff that was in the first 15 minutes of the movie is really necessary for the movie. My creative writing professor when I was in college used to say in medias res, which means start in the middle and then move forward. He would say nobody is interested in watching your character turn their alarm clock off and then eat their cereal and then go use the restroom and then drive to work. Nobody is interested in seeing all that stuff that happens before the story actually starts. And the first 15 minutes, all we find out is that Charlie Hunnam's character, he and his brother, they pilot one of these giant robots, and he gives us a whole lot of info dump on, okay, this is what this world is like, and then we see, spoiler, Charlie Hunnam's brother dies. That's all we really get in the first 15 minutes, and all of that could have been given to us in a little bit more natural exposition throughout the rest of the actual movie, and through small little glimpses of flashback. We didn't really need any of that stuff, and it really slows slows down the movie. This movie is like 2 hours and 15 minutes long. It's really long considering there's not actually a story here. So you very easily could have cut this down to being about 2 hours, and that would have at least gone a little ways towards making this movie not feel like it drags on so much. Number two, just about every time that we have an action scene between a giant robot and a giant monster, these scenes are almost indecipherable because all of these scenes take place while it is raining. And I feel like somebody who worked on this movie must have gone to film school, and in film school they were taught when you're doing a big giant action scene, make it rain, literally make rain fall down so that the audience has trouble seeing what's going on. I feel like somebody was told that, somebody was living by that philosophy, and they are using a whole lot of CGI in this movie. They've got CGI robots and CGI monsters. So I feel like having rain fall in every single action scene makes it a lot easier for them to cover up the CGI stuff and make it look like there's something real fighting something else that's real. This way, it's not as easy to spot any boo-boos like, oh, that's very clearly CGI. Now, I will say, later in the movie, there is one scene, again, it's raining, but it's in the middle of Hong Kong, and so it's at least better lit than a scene that's out in the middle of the ocean or beneath the ocean. It's at least better lit than those scenes, but I feel like they could have done a better job of making these scenes look a little nicer, look like I can actually see what's going on. And I feel like just about every single scene in this movie, if not every single scene in the movie, it was just hard for me to tell what was going on. Okay, I guess a robot punched a monster right there, but it's really hard to tell because there's all this rain, and then you keep cutting back inside the robot to show the two pilots. I just felt like if you're going to only be an action movie, if you're not going to actually have any substance, which this movie did not, then your action at least needs to look good and look presentable. Number three. We are told by Charlie Hunnam's character that drifting is a very unique process. Now, drifting, long story short, is when you have two human beings who get inside a robot and they combine their minds so that they can pilot the robot. Because one person solo piloting a robot is going to overwhelm that person's nervous system. And we are told that Charlie Hunnam and his brother were unique and that they were drift compatible. Except that every single character in this movie drifts with someone else. You've got the two annoying scientists who drift together. You've got one annoying scientist who drifts with the kaiju brain. Then you've got the Australian kid who's a punk, and he drifts with Idris Elba. And then you've got Charlie Hunnam who drifts with Mako. You've got all these characters in this movie who are all drifting with each other, and it makes it less special, especially when you tell us at the beginning of the movie that drifting is a unique thing. And I want to go ahead and say right now, before I get into the rest of my list, that I was reading up on this movie on Internet Movie Database, and it was saying that there was like 5 different people who took a shot at recreating the screenplay and crafting and rehoning the screenplay. And I feel like that is way too many writers to have on a screenplay. And I have a feeling, I don't know because I didn't get to see the first shot at this screenplay, but I have a feeling that's why this movie is just such a jumbled mess, because you had 5 different people coming in and changing little things, and probably at one point this idea that drifting was unique was actually a unique thing in this world, and then other people came in and kind of changed it up. What if instead of just one character drifting throughout this entire movie, we had 15 billion characters drift throughout this entire movie? And so I feel like a lot of the problems that I have in this movie, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them are probably because you had so many different people come in and do treatments on the script, and then they would change little tiny things, but overall, that all begins to accumulate by the end of the movie and by the time it becomes the final product of the movie. So I feel like someone somewhere should have said, no, we've already had 3 different screenwrite drafts of this screenplay. We don't need 2 more writers to come in and change little things. That's it. Let's just get on to the movie. I feel like somebody should have said that. Maybe that didn't have anything to do with it. Maybe the screenplay was a complete rotten mess before these other 4 people got a hold of it. I don't know, but I feel like that's a problem. Maybe it's not. My next point. Okay, so you've got this Australian father and son, and I use quotation marks because when I was watching this movie, I was like, there's no way that guy is old enough to be this other guy's father. And sure enough, I looked it up on Internet Movie Database, and the father, in real life, is only like 10 years older than the guy playing his son. They really should have done a better job to make one of them look older or the other one look younger. But anyway, the son, he is basically just the arrogant jerkhead that you're not supposed to like. And as soon as you see him in a movie, you instantly hate him. And he instantly hates both of our primary characters. And he hates Riley, that's the character played by Charlie Hunnam. He hates Riley because, according to him, when he's yelling at the Marshal, Idris Elba, he hates Riley because he's a has-been. And he hates Mako, Riley's soon-to-be partner in The Robot. He hates her because she's a rookie. Okay, you hate Riley because he's a has-been, but your dad has been doing this longer, if not as long, as Riley, but you don't seem to have a problem with your dad. I would have really liked to have seen an actual reason why this guy hates Riley, other than they're both having a peeing contest, and it's just a testosterone explosion of, I don't like you because you're another dude, and you're about my age, and you're going to make me look bad. I really wish we had an actual reason why this character doesn't like Riley. And the thing is, it's actually planted in the movie. Riley is insubordinate in the first 15 minutes of the movie, and him and his brother's insubordination ends in his brother dying, and probably a whole bunch of other people dying as well. I don't really know exactly what happens after his brother dies, but they go out of their way to save this fishing boat with like 10 different people on it, and only 10 people, instead of going to the city to save a city of millions of people, which is what their orders were. And then Charlie Hunnam's brother ends up dying. The kaiju doesn't get destroyed, I'm pretty sure. Again, it was in an action scene that was covered in rain, so it was really hard to tell what was going on. But I'm pretty sure that the fishing boat had to have died, and then all the people in the city died because Charlie Hunnam and his brother disobeyed orders. So it would have been really good if this Australian guy, who instantly hates Riley, if he hated Riley for that reason. Hey, you're insubordinate, and your insubordination cost a lot of lives 5 years ago. That would have been really cool, because at that point, that's why I hate Riley. I don't feel sorry for Riley, because he kind of brought all of this on himself. But that's not why this guy hates Riley. This guy hates Riley, he says, because Riley's a has-been. But that reason doesn't fly, because his dad has been doing this longer than Riley has. So that was really just another instance of really bad screenwriting. They just kind of threw that in there, I guess because they feel like every action movie has to have the heel that our main character doesn't like, and he gets into a fist fight with him at one point, but then later they come to respect each other. I guess they felt like this had to have that action movie trope, but I didn't really feel like this movie was really benefited from that. My next point, we are told that pilots cannot pilot the Jaegers. The Jaeger is the giant robot. We are told that these pilots cannot pilot the Jaegers by themselves, and if they do, they will die. There have only been 2 people in the entire history of the world who have ever done it by themselves. Idris Elba's character, who's kind of in charge of this whole operation of fighting and killing these monsters, and Riley, Charlie Hunnam's character. Now, Idris Elba, he is from a period in time where all of the pilots did it solo, and then they all eventually died. And we see him a few different points in the movie where he's getting nosebleeds, and then he's taking these pills, and we find out later that it's because of radiation poisoning. And if he ever gets back in a Jaeger, he will 100% die. And then, of course, huge spoiler here, but he later gets back in a Jaeger because nobody else can do it, and then he dies. And then what I don't understand is, why doesn't Riley get the nosebleeds? Why is he perfectly fine after, at the beginning of the movie, after his brother died, he continues to take the Jaeger on up to dry land, and then he collapses and falls out of the Jaeger? Why doesn't he die? He piloted a Jaeger by himself, and we are told that nobody can do that. And then we're said, okay, only 2 people have ever done that, Riley and the Marshal. Okay, but the Marshal is dying of radiation poisoning, and we are told that Gypsy is a nuclear engine on this giant pair of legs. Why isn't Riley dying? And that's never given to us. And I'm sure that's something that probably would have been answered if we didn't have 5 people coming in and rewriting the script before this became the actual movie. Next, this movie treats Charlie Day's character like he is a genius because he came up with the idea of drifting with a kaiju brain. And he does this, and then basically these 2 kaiju come out of the water, and they are chasing after him because he drifted with a kaiju brain. And Ron Perlman's character says, you are an idiot, because when you drift with anything, it goes both ways. You get their memories, but they also get yours. And now the kaiju are searching after you. Number 1, the kaiju is searching after Charlie Day. It like tears open the ground, and he's in this underground bunker, and then it just kind of looks at him, and then it turns around and walks away. We're never told why it was searching for him. Did it want to kill him? Did it want to make him part of the family? What does it want to do? And then, after it finds him, it just walks away. And I've watched this movie twice, and I still don't understand that scene. But furthermore, this movie treats Charlie Day like he is the smartest character in the world for coming up with this idea, when, from where I'm standing, as soon as he says, we need to drift with a kaiju brain, as soon as he says that, I'm thinking, no, that's a bad idea for exactly the reason that Ron Perlman says later, because then the kaiju will know what you're thinking. I was thinking that as soon as he said that, and these characters don't seem to think that that's a problem, and then Ron Perlman brings it up, and then as soon as Ron Perlman brings it up, it's not a problem, and then they just go back and they drift with another kaiju brain, and that's how they find out how they need to defeat all the monsters and keep them from coming back into our world. This movie is just really sloppy with all, like, that whole storyline with Charlie Day. Felt like it was just kind of shoehorned at the last minute. Okay, how do we keep this character in the movie throughout the entire film? Well, what if we do this really long extended subplot that doesn't actually mean anything, where he drifts with the kaiju brain and then he has to run from a monster, but then for some reason the monster doesn't kill him? That whole thing didn't make any sense at all, and basically it feels like they just needed to have something so that our good guys can find out exactly how they need to defeat the monsters, and they weren't really sure how they could do that, so they threw in this subplot. These guys are scientists. Charlie Day's character and this other guy, they are scientists. Their job is to do science stuff. So instead of having them drift with the kaiju brain and then telling us all this contradicting information, oh, this was a bad idea, oh wait, no, this was a good idea, and this is how we save the world, instead of giving us all of that, here's a funny idea. Why don't we have the scientists do science stuff, and then that's how they find out, hey guys, this is what's wrong with your plan. You're going to have to do this so that you can destroy the rift. That was just yet another sloppy bit of filmmaking in this movie. Number whatever. Why does the kaiju not kill Newt? I already talked about that. Newt is Charlie Day's character. It's really sloppy. It doesn't make any sense. I've seen this movie twice, and it's still not explained why the kaiju is just staring at him and then turns around and walks away and eventually gets killed by a gypsy. I don't understand why that scene was even there, or why this whole subplot was even in that movie, but let alone why that scene was not explained in the movie. Number whatever again. Why did the government shut down the Jaeger program? Now, we are told at one point that the monsters are destroying the Jaegers faster than they can get built. But then at the beginning of the movie, we are told the Jaeger program is just not good, it's not going to work, but building a giant wall to keep the kaiju out, that is a good idea. And then, pretty early in the movie, we see one of the kaiju just walks through the wall like it's made out of Legos, and then the government still thinks that the wall is a good idea. Now, I get that if the kaiju are tearing down the Jaegers faster than they can be built, that's a problem. But if the fate of the world is at stake, I don't really understand why at least one character wouldn't say, let's throw all of the money in the world towards the Jaeger program, and then we can build more Jaegers, and then they can all destroy these kaijus for us. I don't understand why at least one politician didn't say that. Every single politician that we see in this movie thinks that building a giant wall is a good idea, even after we see that the wall is completely ineffective. And I get that telling us that the Jaeger program has been shut down, that gives us a little bit of a time limit on how long these guys have to destroy these monsters. And anytime one of the robots gets destroyed, then okay, that's one less robot that we have, because the government's not giving us funding anymore. So it makes the stakes feel higher. But it's also incredibly stupid, because I don't think that any character in this world would actually shut down the Jaeger program. Instead, I think they would just throw more money at it so that they could build more of these things so that they could protect the world from these monsters. That was just another stupid thing in this movie. Why can't we trust Hannibal Chow? Hannibal Chow is the character played by Ron Perlman, and when Idris Elba is telling Charlie Day, you need to go and find this guy so that you can get a kaiju brain so that you can drift with it and find out what these kaiju's plans are. And he says, by the way, do not trust him. You cannot trust this guy. Why? We are told that he's untrustworthy, but the only thing that he does that's even kind of untrustworthy is when he finds out that Charlie Day drifted with a kaiju, he says, I want you out of my home. I'm going to go into my own personal bunker. You're going to go into the city's bunker where there's like 100 people in there all crowding around trying to stay away from a kaiju, and I don't want to see you again. And then when the kaiju doesn't kill Charlie Day, he comes back and says, hey, I want a kaiju brain. We are never told why Hannibal Chow is untrustworthy. The most untrustworthy thing he does is also one of the most rational things in the movie. When he says, what you did was stupid, this could get everybody killed, it could definitely get you killed. And I agreed with him. I was like, yeah, drifting with the kaiju was really stupid. But then, out of nowhere, the movie becomes bipolar and says, no, wait, that was a really good idea. And we want that to be how these guys find out how to defeat all the monsters and save the day. Telling us that this guy is untrustworthy, it is the opposite of Chekhov's gun. Chekhov's gun is when you introduce something and then it has to be fired before the end of the movie. If you tell us that Hannibal Chow is untrustworthy, you need to tell us why before the end of the movie. You need to have him betray all of humanity and make a deal with the kaiju or something like that. Something that would tell us why this guy is untrustworthy. Otherwise, it's just you trying to throw in a really cool line that doesn't mean anything because this guy doesn't actually do anything untrustworthy throughout the entire movie. The next thing, this movie takes way too long to get Mako and Riley together. This is, I'm not even exaggerating, about 1/3 of the movie. As soon as if you cut out the first 15 minutes of the movie, the very beginning of the movie is when Idris Elba comes and he says, Riley, I need you back with us. You're the only person from the Mark III Jaeger program who's still alive, and we need you to basically be a bodyguard for these newer, sexier Jaegers who are going to go and drop a bomb on the Rift. And I'll talk about that in a minute because I've got a problem with that plot also. But then we're like, okay, who's going to be his partner? And the only person who's really compatible to be his partner is Idris Elba's basically adopted daughter. And I don't know the actress's name, but her character's name is Mako. And she's never piloted anything before. Like I said, the Australian guy, he hates her because she's a rookie. She's never actually piloted a Jaeger before, but she's really compatible with Riley. Everybody seems to think so, including Idris Elba. And yet, it takes 1/3 of the movie. I am not even kidding. It takes that long before these guys are actually, before everyone has agreed that these two need to be the ones piloting this Jaeger. 1/3 of this movie is just all of these characters arguing about who should be Riley's pilot, or co-pilot, rather. And I know, as soon as she's introduced and she says, I was expecting something different about this guy, and then he says, different good or different bad. As soon as that scene happens, I know that she is going to be his co-pilot on this robot. So why are you dragging your feet so much on this subplot that if I know what's going to happen, I'm assuming that everyone else in the world knows what's going to happen too. Nobody is surprised when at the end of the end of the second act, you finally got these guys saying, okay, we're going to be co-pilots and we're going to go and we're going to destroy this monster. Nobody's surprised because we could all see that coming from 500 miles away. Why are you dragging your feet so much on this? And again, it's because this movie doesn't have any story. So it's trying to make you think that there's a story by dragging its feet on this one part of the movie that doesn't need to have its feet dragged so much. It's trying to make you think that something is going on when in reality, it's just all these characters kind of treading water and arguing about stuff that we already know what the outcome is. That was probably one of the things I hated most about this movie, was that it took them so long to get these two characters together in the Jaeger that they're going to go and fight monsters in, because I knew that these two were going to be partners, and it just took way too long to get them both in the robot. Let's see, the next thing. Oh yes, if you drift with a monster who is born on the planet Earth, how in the world does that monster have memories of what happened on the other side of the portal? At one point, Charlie Day, he drifts with a kaiju brain of a kaiju that presumably came from the other side of the rift. And then that basically destroys that kaiju brain. So then him and the other guy, who kind of sort of looks like the penguin from the Gotham TV show, it's not that guy, but him and the other scientists, they then are, well, specifically Charlie Day, he's going around trying to find another kaiju brain. And then this kaiju gets taken down in Hong Kong, and then they go and that kaiju, its brain was destroyed, but then it's pregnant, and then the baby bursts out, and then it dies because the umbilical cord is wrapped around its neck, and so then they have a baby kaiju brain, and then they take that brain, they drift with it, and then they're able to find out exactly how the good guys are able to defeat the bad guys and prevent all these monsters from coming out of the portal. How are you able to do that when this baby does not have any memories from the other side of the portal? It was just born 4 seconds ago. Its only memory should be jumping out of its mother's womb in planet Earth. And if you want to tell me that it's hereditary and that it's a race memory, that's fine. Maybe you should have had one of your smart science characters say something like that. Like, oh, it probably has hereditary memories of what happened on the other side. If you had just had 5 seconds to have one of your characters say that, then that wouldn't have been a problem for me. But as is, it's a pretty big problem that I think doesn't really make a lot of sense, but if you had at least given me a bull science reason why this is happening, then I could have at least been like, oh, okay, I'll buy that, and then I would have gone along with it. The next thing that I had a problem with, okay, this is my big final problem that I had with this movie. So at the very beginning of the movie, after Idris Elba recruits Charlie Hunnam to come back into the Jaeger program, basically we are told that there's these two Jaegers, they're going to go down to the bottom of the ocean, and they're going to drop a giant bomb on the portal that all these monsters are coming out from, and then Gypsy, which is the Mark III Jaeger that Charlie Hunnam he pilots, it is going to kind of run interference, and it's basically going to protect these other two Jaegers. And then we are told that they already tried this plot once before, and it didn't work then. And then basically Idris Elba just says, don't worry, I have a plan, but I'm not going to tell you what's going on. basically his plan is to do exactly what they tried to do sometime before the movie started. Charlie Hunnam says, this didn't work then, why do you think it's going to work now? Nobody answers his question, and then at the very end of the movie, after they are trying to do the exact same thing that they tried to do before, the two scientist guys come in and say, it's not going to work because you need to have monster DNA so that the portal thinks that a monster is going through the portal, and then you can take it with you, and then you can drop a portal, or drop a bomb on the other side of the portal, and then it will blow up the portal from that side. But just dropping the bomb on this side of the portal, it will deflect the bomb, and it will destroy all the Jaegers, but it won't destroy the portal. So what I want to know is, why in the world did Idris Elba think that this plan was going to work a second time, when we are already told that it did not work the first time, and we need to have some different kind of plan? And this is one of those things where I feel like it probably would have made more sense if we had seen some of the other drafts for this screenplay before 500 people got their hands on it and changed different things about this movie. And that's all I have to say. Those are my notes, very extensive notes. Like I said, this movie, it's not the worst movie in the world. I think I said that at one point. Maybe I didn't. It's not the worst movie in the world, but it's not a really good movie. And I think when I was watching it, I realized why everyone in the world was getting so hyped up about this movie. It's because they hadn't seen anything quite like this in movies. Now, in anime, you've got stuff like Gundam Wing, or Mobile Suit Gundam, whatever it's called, Neon Evangelion Genesis. Those are anime about giant robots fighting giant other things. I don't know what they fight in Gundam, but in Neon Evangelion Genesis, it's giant monsters, I think, or aliens or something like that. So those are anime where that kind of thing happens all the time. But in movies, if you look at what we've got in movies over the last 15 years or so, before Pacific Rim, you had the Michael Bay Transformer movies, which basically everyone hates. I don't think anyone actually likes those movies. And then you had Cloverfield, where you don't even get to see the monster. And then Roland Emmerich's Godzilla movie from 1998. You don't have a whole lot of giant robot or giant monster movies these days. And so I think even though this movie was a pile of garbage, and it didn't make any sense, and there was absolutely no substance at all, even though all of that is very true, I think the reason that people really got on board with this movie is because it's better than all those other movies. It's better than Roland Emmerich's Godzilla. It's better than Michael Bay's Transformers. And then other than that, we don't have a whole lot of monster and robot movies. So I feel like that's why people got their panties in a wad when this movie came out. They were so excited because they hadn't seen anything like this in movies in a really long time. Or if something had been done kind of like this, like one of the Transformers movies, it's just really awful, even worse than this movie. So I did not like this movie at all. And what's really puzzling is that I heard they are going to be doing a sequel to this movie, which is puzzling for two reasons. One, I heard that this movie bombed, and I was looking at two different sources. One source was saying that overall it made about twice as much as its overall budget, and then I saw another place that said that overall it didn't even quite make budget. So I'm not sure which is true, but I have heard from other people that this movie did not do well financially. So I don't really understand why they would even make a sequel if the movie didn't do very well in the first place. But also, they destroy the giant portal that all these robots or all these monsters are coming through. I don't physically understand how you can do a sequel to this movie when, in theory, they've destroyed the place where all the monsters are coming from. So the only way they can do it is if in the next movie it's like, oh, there's another portal that opened up on the other side of the world. It's in the Atlantic Ocean instead of the Pacific Ocean. If they did something like that, which that would be stupid, because at that point then we would just have to assume that these monsters are always going to keep coming through, and it doesn't matter if they have a victory, because then it's just going to be a Pyrrhic victory, and these monsters are just going to keep coming anyway. So that would be a really hollow, that would make this movie a really hollow victory. And also, I just don't think that would be a very good move storytelling-wise, which, since it's the Pacific Rim universe, that would probably happen. Since this movie was full of things that didn't really work story-wise, they would probably do something like that in a sequel. But I don't see how they can do a sequel for those two reasons. One, this movie didn't do very well financially, and two, they have actually closed off any way for any more monsters to come through, and therefore your source of movie. But that is all that I had to say about this movie. I know I talked about it for a really long time, but I had a whole lot to say. In fact, when I watched this movie the first time, I was like, I definitely want to do a video on that, but I have to get all my thoughts together, and that was part of why I wanted to watch it again, so that I could really decide, was I just in a really bad mood when I watched this movie the first time, or is it a really bad movie movie, and I figured out it was a little bit of both. But those are my thoughts on Pacific Rim. You guys probably liked the movie a lot more than I did. I saw just about everyone on the internet thought this movie was Citizen Kane. So if you guys like this movie, if you don't like my review, let me know why in the comments below. Let's try to be civil, please. If you did like the movie, please tell me why. I just didn't feel like it was a very good movie. It didn't work for me, but if it worked for you, then very good. I'm glad that some people enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it. So those are my thoughts on this movie. I hope that you guys have a great rest of the day, and I will catch you later. Have a good one.